Throughout the 2010s, we've seen some of the strongest storms in recorded history form across the Western Pacific. And smack dab in the middle of where these storms typically form is the island of Okinawa. Located in the southern Japanese islands, this is home to 1.3 million people, and believe it or not, 80,000 Americans. Now I want to put that in perspective, especially for people from the United States. 80,000 people, about the population of Yuma, Arizona, or West Palm Beach in Florida. So a good amount of people there that likely remember these top 5 storms from the past 10 years that directly impacted that island. But before I get into it, I want to let you know there was numerous storms that rolled over the island over the course of the decade. It is very common. Actually, this graphic right here gives you an idea of all the storms that came in within 100 nautical miles of Okinawa. Now, I am going to only talk about storms that directly hit the island. Storms like Chaba in 2016 actually hit Kumejima, just located towards the west of Okinawa Honto, as a Category 5 storm. If it wavered just a little bit, that likely would have been number 1. But it's not even on the list because it did not hit directly. Number 5, though. Without a doubt, the most active year during the 2010s for this specific island was 2012. 3 storms back to back hit Okinawa, starting with Typhoon Bolaven, which moved over the island on August 26. According to JTWC, the winds were the strongest to hit Okinawa directly in over 50 years, with 160-mile-per-hour winds at landfall. Satellite imagery of the storm as it approached is just absolutely impressive. In fact, the overall scale of the storm was something really noteworthy outside of the actual intensity. Good news, despite its strength, the amount of damage reported in Okinawa was minimal. A testimony to the infrastructure of the island and how it's built to stand up to storms of this magnitude. Still though, hundreds of people were evacuated ahead of the storm, and several people were even injured as well. The strongest storm 2 years later of 2014, not only in Okinawa, not only in the Western Pacific, but worldwide, was Typhoon Vongfong. This, you can see this imagery from the International Space Station, actually went viral, just showing the magnitude of this storm as it blew up to a max Category 5 southeast of the island. It did weaken a little bit before making landfall on October 13th, but it still brought some pretty significant winds. Once again, the infrastructure stood up to the storm, but 33 people were injured on the island. Majority, if not all, occurred while people were outside the reinforced homes, including a 9-year-old girl who lost her finger after getting it slammed in a door. One reason why we always stress for military members, especially people who are not used to the weather on the island, to follow those T-Corps warnings to a T. If you are in T-Corps 1, you're being told to stay inside because of a storm, just do it, because majority of the injuries in the southern Japanese islands typically occur when people head outside. Vongfong was a prime example of that. The storm also left $8 million in damage across the island, mainly agricultural, but much more damage and injuries was reported across all of Japan as the storm turns towards the north and just raked eastern areas of Honshu and Kyushu. I do want to go back to 2012. Typhoon Sanba, which another Category 5 storm at its peak intensity, it did weaken before hitting Okinawa, and it really blew up quite quickly just towards the east of the Philippines, another case of the Philippine Sea effect. This one moved due north, making landfall in northern areas of Okinawa Honto, where it brought $11 million in damage on the island. Now, it didn't only just hit Okinawa, it also moved north into Gifu, where the storm brought even more damage, including numerous floods and landslides. Another more recent storm on this list was in 2018. It was part of back-to-back storms. We had Jebi that hit Okinawa, followed by Typhoon Trami. Out of the 2 storms, Trami was by far the more damaging of the storms. Prior to hitting Okinawa, it blew up to a Category 5 storm, even brought recorded winds up to 183 kilometers per hour in Naha, Okinawa. The storm actually broke record winds at 30 different weather stations across all of Japan. Several injuries were reported on Okinawa and 4 deaths were reported across Japan from the storm, not to mention numerous trees that were uprooted and even flipped cars on the island of Okinawa as well. Another case, just staying indoors and riding out the storm was the best bet for people, but definitely very damaging storm system. So I bet you can guess what year the number 1 storm system on my list took place. It, of course, was 2012 with Typhoon Jelawat. That storm gave us a lot of rememberable footage just because of the way it hit, how strong the winds were, and actually, I'll just show you this video. The storm broke records, by the way, across all of Japan. In fact, the 3rd highest reported wind gust ever on record in Naha, Okinawa, was reported in this storm of 136 miles per hour, about 61 meters per second. This topped out in the city by a pair of typhoons in the 50s, including Super Typhoon Emma, which killed 77 people on Okinawa. On a side note, by the way, the amount of deaths from the 50s from these storms compared to storms nowadays that hit the southern Japanese islands is a good example of how an area prepares and how new laws and regulations were put in place ahead of these storms, and something I think the rest of the world can aspire to. The storm hit on September 25th of 2012, just sweeping across the island. Actually, according to NHK Media, about 77 injuries were reported on Okinawa. Now, this storm, by the way, was just the case of where the infrastructure held up. For the most part, a lot of superficial damage, down trees, down power lines, but vehicles, which you can't tie down, was one thing that so many videos captured. And this is actually often a common case in Okinawa where cars, especially these light K cars in Japan, just get tossed about during these destructive winds. In total, about $25 million in damage was reported from this storm. So let me know in the comment box down below what you guys think, because there was a lot of storms that hit Okinawa. It was hard trying to filter through some of the strongest ones over the past decade, and I'm only looking back 10 years because there was just so many storms to go through if I went back since records began into the 40s through the 50s. But yeah, anyway, stay safe out there, guys. As always, thanks for watching. Let me know if you like these type of videos too. I'm trying to change things up just a little bit while we are in the lull between storm systems, and it's always nice just to look back at history, because you can only learn if you study what's happened before, help us prepare for the future. Stay safe out there.